what you gonna say when it all falls away? Today, nothing ever found. Take a look around above the ground. There's no love out on the streets today. It's a mystery. Some say there's a better way. People love to talk to ease the pain. No way it's ever gonna solve a thing. Speak out, love to hear your voice. War and hate that seem to be the drugs of choice. Tell me what tomorrow brings. It's a mystery. Open your eyes to truly see that there's no more time left for you and me. Life's such a mystery that we refuse to see. We never ever knew. Godspeed, here's a time late. Better grab what's yours, don't hesitate. Don't say you didn't really have a clue.
Welcome back to a Friday night with the Howard Stern of Pro Wrestling, Monte the Pharaoh. How are you? Special guest, Frank Dusek. Frank, how are you, sir? How are you, my friend?
Well, thank you, brother.
You look good, man. You look good. Dressed up for the occasion. Much better dressed than we are, that's for sure.
Well, I heard you guys were going to be there, and so I figured I better get ready, you know.
Well, you look good, man. You look good, and thanks for joining us on a Friday night.
Pleasure's mine, brother.
Jimmy, nothing like having these legends, and Frank's on the second tier of our 3-day excursion this week. What are you thinking, Jimmy?
Well, what I'm thinking is I was just YouTube surfing, and I watched Mr. Dusek use his hold called the Cobra, which basically got one of your favorites, Mike, Playboy Buddy Rose, to pass the F out.
Wow.
Now, the problem with the match, Mr. Dusek, is that they ended and did not continue. Did you win that match? Do you even remember? What kind of picture is that, Mike?
I have no idea.
Oh, God.
I hate to admit.
We're all left in limbo forever. All I know is Buddy Rose was unconscious. I was like, whoa, I got to tell Mike.
It couldn't be because they were setting Buddy up to work with Roddy at that big show. So that had to be, it was just a stepping stone. They were setting up something so he could beat me.
Right.
As a stepping stone to Roddy.
Right. Hell of a match. Mike, those are the days when they actually did great build-ups for stories. This match that I just saw was fantastic, and that's just the setup for the big payoff. You get the fannies in the seats. That's how it works. Mike, I don't know if you're aware, but Mr. Dusek is part of a real long lineage of wrestlers going way, way back. And there's even a fella named Wally involved, I think, Mike. What do you think of that?
That's my dad. He started in 1926 as his first match. He was 16 years old.
Tell us about your dad and your family starting this whole wrestling family deal.
Well, the Duseks, Rudy, Ernie, Emil, and Joe, they're brothers. And in 1936, Emil broke his leg in a car wreck. And there were 4 Duseks, and suddenly there were 3. And my dad had been trained by a guy named John Pesek, who was a pretty well-known shooter at the time. And they needed somebody that was tough that could stand up to the Dusek name. So he was called to Omaha, and he said he spent an hour and a half in the ring with Ernie and 45 minutes with Rudy. And they declared him good enough to be a Dusek, and they made him a Dusek. And that's how it happened. So he began filling dates for him, and he was a Dusek ever again. So I asked him about it one time. He said he wished he'd never done it. He wished he'd stayed with his name. He was building his own reputation. But like I said, his reputation alone went 60 years in the wrestling business. So he covered a lot on his own.
Sure did.
Here might be maybe the dumbest question of all time, Frank. So you could just slap me through the computer. But when your father started, was wrestling real at that point, or was it still at this point choreographed?
Well, the way he explained it to me was the main event were workers. They were. Now, it wasn't always agreed. Most of the time it was agreed to. A lot of times if you laid down because you got a payday from the next show, because you laid down to build somebody for the next show. So there were compensations for laying down, but it was a business. But the preliminary matches were all amateur. I mean, Abe Jacobs, Pat O'Connor, my dad wrestled for 3 years before he found out it was work. He didn't know. Abe Jacobs and Pat O'Connor said the same thing. Abe talked about that. He wrestled for 4 years before he found out it was work. Just they didn't tell you until he got to the point where they either had to hurt him or smarten him up. They decided to smarten him up, and that's how he learned about the wrestling. But then he after he left high school, he joined the circus. He learned to fly when he was 13, 1922, on biplanes. So he would fly wing walkers and stuff, aerobatics during the day, and at night he'd wrestle all comers on the midway. And that's where he met John Pesek and ended up staying with him for 3 years and took off after that.
How influential would you say that the Dusek family was as far as being a prototype of sorts for future great families in the business like the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, which I know Mike is going to want to ask you about those folks?
Well, they were very influential. I never thought about that, but I guess they were kind of the first, weren't they? Or one of the first.
That's what I'm thinking.
One of the first groups. I never really thought about it that way, but I guess they were. There were cards, and I've got a couple. Duseks versus. There was a Dusek on every card, every match.
Were they faces or were they heels back in those times? Because I haven't read anything on that.
Most of the time they were heels. There were times when they weren't, but most of the time they were heels.
Okay.
There was a reason. I mean, the old man, he was in and out of jail pretty regularly for starting riots and stuff like that. Oh, yeah. As I've gone through it, I've heard stories, and I've found newspaper clippings over the years to verify some of those stories. He was a character, that's for sure.
So do you just slide into the business through the family? I mean, how does it work for you to get in?
Well, my dad, when he retired in 1960, he became a road agent for Jim Crockett. So as I grew up with him traveling, running shows for Jim Crockett. So I learned about that side of the wrestling business before I ever learned anything about the ring itself. I mean, I set up rings, I put out posters, I ushered, I kept time, I announced, I even settled box offices as a young man.
Frank, when you say Jim Crockett, you're talking Jim Crockett Sr. Okay,
Mr. Crockett
good.
Sr., not Jimmy. I've got no use for Jimmy whatsoever. I'm talking about Mr. Crockett Sr. Mr. Crockett Sr. was a true genius, but Jimmy never learned a thing from him. If you want to blame one man for the fall of the wrestling business, you blame Jimmy Crockett. And I will stand by that till the day I die. He's the guy.
Frank, I'm going to have to, now that you went down this rabbit hole, I need you to elaborate a little more. Talk about this.
Mr. Crockett was a promoting genius, but Jimmy was embarrassed by the wrestling business. And when he was in school, he would tell his friends that his dad was a concert promoter. Anything but the wrestling. He just was embarrassed. He stayed in college for 7 years to stay out of the wrestling business. The only reason he came in was because, he couldn't stay in college any longer. But when he never learned anything from his dad. So when his dad died, he took over. You might as well have brought in a guy off the street and made him the promoter. I mean, if Jimmy had any, well, see, John Ringley, actually, when Mr. Crockett died, John Ringley was put in charge of the company, not Jimmy Crockett, because Mr. Crockett knew Jimmy couldn't run the company. John Ringley was the guy in charge, but then Ringley met Miss Tennessee and left the Crockett family, and things went downhill. But Jimmy just never took the opportunity to learn the business. So he was the guy that could have stood in Vince's way. He didn't have the ability because he never learned from his dad. He didn't learn a damn thing from his dad. Nothing.
Well, let me ask you that though. So Jim, at one point, NWA was doing very well, right? They were actually competition. So is it because Vince Jr. started making the push that Jim couldn't keep up, or was it just Jim was a joke?
Yeah, Jimmy got caught up in being a star too. You go to a show and you've got the promoter driving in his limousine, and you got the stars in their limousines, and the company's paying for everything. You draw $50,000, you lose money. You can't run a business like that. Mr. Crockett, the only thing he learned from Mr. Crockett was you got to spend money to make money, but you spend money in ways that make you money. He would give the gate of a Christmas show, which wasn't a big show, to the local charity so that the newspapers would give him good publicity for the rest of the year. That's how you spend money to make money. You don't just buy limousines and stay in suites. And he paid me one time to fly to Texas, pick up a wrestling ring, drive it to Los Angeles and up to San Francisco to just set up 2 rings, and paid me $1,200 plus trans. Now, what the hell kind of business setup is that?
Yeah, but that's the type of guy you want to work for, Frank.
Well, yeah, but that's not the guy that's going to stay in business. Jimmy he got caught up in the stardom and just had no concept of the business. And like I say, I blame Jimmy 100%.
Did he want to be everybody's best friend? Because, in other words, what I'm asking is
no, Jimmy was an asshole.
Really? Okay.
He was not a nice guy.
Were there any wrestlers that heavily influenced him behind the scenes that were able to work him?
I don't know. I was not around Jimmy enough to tell you that. I'm sure that Flair and Dusty and those guys had him, because he was trying to live their lifestyle. So I'm sure that they had a certain amount of control over him, but I can't speak to that and tell you that's what it was, because I was not part of that.
What about David?
David is a nice guy. I like David. David, when he left wrestling, he's been spending the last years working for like Christian ministries in disaster relief and things like that. I mean, this is the nicest guy you'll ever. I saw David a couple of years ago, first time in a long time. He was just like old home week. Very nice guy. My favorite was Jackie, but Jackie was the screw up of the family. So he got paid $1,200 a week to stay away from the office.
Wow.
Yeah, Jimmy. It's like Andrew. What's the 2 brothers over there in England? William and the other one. They didn't like each other, so the one paid the other brother to stay away from the business. He lived in a hotel where the boys stayed and just stayed around the pool all day and drank and smoked and had a good time.
Let's jump from one promoter to the other. I guess legend has it you were very close with Fritz von Erich.
No, I was never close to Fritz.
Okay, fill me in. Where am I wrong here?
Well, I don't know where you got that I was close to Fritz. I probably never talked to Fritz more than 7 or 8 times in my life. And it was only in passing. Now, when Kenny had to run out of money and gave the company back to Fritz wasn't going to run it. So I was left. The boys, Kevin and Kerry, were supposed to run it. They couldn't run their lives. They could never run a company. So I just stayed on and started running the company. And the only time I ever talked to Fritz about anything is when they were doing the thing about the match with the AWA and Jerry and us. what was it called? Super Clash?
Super Clash with Jerry Lawler.
And Fritz came to me and told me to go to Dallas, go to Nashville and stand in for him. And the only requirement he had was that Kerry win the title. That was the only thing he did. That's the only thing he wanted. Whatever else they wanted was fine as long as Kerry won the title.
What was the vibe like in that locker room? That's my partner's favorite company outside of the WWE. We obviously grew up here in the Northeast, but what was it like when you first walked into that WCCW environment?
Well, the first time was '79. It wasn't world class yet, but it was hot. I mean, Sportatorium was kicking. We were making money all around. Very stiff territory, even back in those days, which was great for me because I was a stiff worker. I couldn't help it. But I had a blast. I wish I could have stayed there forever.
So how do you go to that company and really not have involvement with Fritz then?
Well, by the time I was running the company, Fritz was out of it. Fritz had sold the company to Kenny Mantell. And then when Kenny bailed out, Fritz didn't want anything to do with it. So the boys were actually trying to run it. Fritz was not around at all. He was living out in Tyler, Texas. He didn't come into Dallas at all in those days. The only time I saw Fritz, the last time I saw Fritz was when he came in to have a meeting with Jerry Jarrett. And Jerry told me that I had Fritz's office was my office. So Jerry said, just come on, sit in here. So he had me sit in on the meeting. And Fritz laid down to Jerry, just like he'd done to Kenny, that the boys were going to get $1,500 a week, no matter how many shows they worked. That's going to be their deal. This is da-da-da-da-da. You know, Fritz, he was like Bill. He got by by being a brute. That's how he dealt with people, just like Bill Watts did. And when he was all said and done, Jerry said, well, here's what we're going to do. So I'll give Kerry $300 every time he wrestles, just like I give Jeff. And I'll give Kevin $75 every time he wrestles. But by then, Kevin was past his prime, let's say. He was having a lot of problems, and he could not work at all. I mean, his health wasn't good, and he had other personal issues. Yeah. I'm shocked. I thought Kerry would be the one that would live, not Kevin.
Really?
I've never.
So Frank,
Kevin
I want to get into that because we had Eric Embry on, and again, Jimmy and I are just fans, right? So obviously, I know shit, right? So that's why you're here. Kevin has always been laid out as the sweet Von Erich that didn't get involved into the drugs. And Eric Embry ripped an asshole on that. So before you get into that, though, I'll ask you first, did you see the Iron Claw at all?
No, I did not.
How come?
No, I did not. I saw a little bit of the movie a long time back with, what's the guy with the face that's had all the surgery, the boxer?
Mickey Rourke?
Mickey Rourke.
The wrestler.
Yeah, he did the wrestling movie, and I saw a little piece of that. And so I knew the boys. I didn't want to see that because I know what they were like, and I know what what movies are going to be. Kevin's is the spokesman or the expertise from that movie, so he was going to be the star. He was going to be the hero. I didn't need to. I mean, Kevin was the number 3 of the Von Erichs. I'll say that.
Well, let's do it this way then. I'm going to first start with David Von Erich. Talk to us about David Von Erich. Your thoughts on David Von Erich. Fans always felt that David Von Erich was tagged to be the next NWA champion and could have really carried it and was the best of all the boys. So talk to us about David.
Well, I don't know if David would have been champion or not because of his body. He could have been. He was good enough to do it. But I'm not sure that his look would have gotten him over. But he was by far the best worker, the best businessman. He was Fritz with a little less brutish. You know what I mean? He didn't have Fritz's. He was a little easier to get along with. But he was the guy that was going to run the company. He would have been the next generation to run the company. He was by far the businessman. Everything about him, everything he did was towards his career in the business. So he was the easiest one to work with. He was the best one to work with. He understood the value of selling. He understood the business, not just not just the glamour and the glory.
I feel he had the size. He was a big man. I
Yeah,
think that
he would have grown into it,
yeah,
just
absolutely.
like Barry did.
Right, right. Do you think that Fritz's reputation, like you have said that you didn't see much of Fritz, but is Fritz's reputation as a father figure to his kids fair from what you've gathered over the years?
Well, I always thought Fritz was the father from hell. I mean, the few times that I saw him, I thought that he was a terrible father. But I mean, for instance, we were in San Antonio and Kerry was working with Flair. Now, at this time, the Von Erichs, all three boys were hot. You could substitute David for Kerry. You could substitute Kevin for Kerry, Kerry for David. You could substitute them and the fans didn't care. But Fritz made Kerry have his knee drained, in the dressing room with these big needles, taking all his fluid off of his knees so he can go out and wrestle. And he's taking pills for the pain. What father does that? This is not. This is a sport. This is an entertainment. What father does that? Give you another example. Hang on. Can I say fuck on TV? Yeah. Okay.
Wait, what did you say, Frank? What did you say?
I was making sure it was okay. When you worked with Kevin, the only way you could make Kevin sell was to hurt him. I mean, you had to tie him up. You had to do something. So I was in the dressing room, and Fritz came through. One of the few times I talked to him, he stopped. He looked at me and said, "My boy Kev tells me you're a little stiff." And I kind of bubbled something about being sorry. Fuck him if he can't take it. I mean, just that's how those boys were scared to death. I mean, when they got away from him, they ran wild. I mean, by the time in '79, they were already just everything was getting more and more. They would gamble, $20, $50 on whether the next bridge was the inches would be over 6 inches or under 6 inches. They would gamble on things like that, or just anything. And of course, all the other activities. Dallas is hard on sports fans. They really are. I mean, how many sports heroes in Dallas have crashed over the years between the Cowboys and everybody else? It's really hard on their heroes. And it was hard on the Von Erich boys big time.
Well, here's the question on David, since we're on David. Do you believe that David died of an intestinal disease over in Japan, or do you think that he overdosed?
I'm not 100% sure. There's always a problem with, especially if you're doing drugs and then you're changing diets and traveling and overseas and long stretches without sleep and things. It's a lot of stress on a body. So I don't know if it was drugs. I don't know if it was just intestinal or what. I can't tell you. It wouldn't shock me if it was drugs. But I don't know.
Would you say that it was overall pressure at the end of the day? These kids were too young and got too much too fast?
Yeah, very much so. And each one was given it quicker. I mean, David got it. Now, he was a little more in the timing, but then he passed it on to Kevin a little younger. Then Kevin passed it on to Kerry even younger. And not just the wrestling, but other things. We won't go there either. But they were introduced to women at a very early age and things like that shouldn't, at an age when it wasn't appropriate by the brothers. You know what I mean? Each brother introduced it. So things like that warped their upbringing.
So,
Plus,
you're just trying to say the Von Erichs got laid at a very early age, is what you're trying to say?
Something like that.
Yeah, in a couple of cases, in a couple of instances, at an inappropriate age. We'll leave it at that.
I understand.
Yeah. So those kind of things warp. When things happen to you, or you're introduced to those things at such a young age, by the time you reach 20s and 30s, your mind is kind of going places. It was hard on those boys. It really was.
How did you feel about Vince McMahon's presentation of Kerry when he got to the WWF with the Texas Tornado thing? Did you think that moniker really suited Kerry Von Erich?
No, but they couldn't use the modern day warrior, because that was ours, and so he gave. I don't know. I really didn't see much of it. I didn't watch a lot of wrestling after I left Dallas. I really didn't. But by then, Kerry was having his own problems. By that point, he was not the guy that we had in Dallas. He was already pretty far down the road.
Well, let's get back to Kevin real quick. Talk to us a little bit about Kevin. How come he gets the reputation of being the good son?
He survived.
Mm.
The last one tells the tale. You know, I mean, that's it. If Kerry had lived, he'd be the good son. If David had lived, he'd be the good son. His Kev.
Listen, Frank, you wouldn't know this, but I just want to know your gut feeling. When you hear, I don't know if you watch anything with Kevin, but you hear him now. He's an older man. I'm sure he has a ton of regrets. He lost his entire family. Do you think he blames himself that he continued to go on with the drugs, even though the family kept going and he was losing them at a record pace?
I don't know how he feels about it now. At the time, no, he had no clue. I mean, no, I can't. I don't want to put Kevin's stuff on the street because he's still alive. But Kev had no clue. Well, I don't know. I don't want to.
This is a tough show, Frank.
Yeah, no, I just Kev's recovered. He's living a good life. Those things, yeah, I don't want to put anything on the street that causes him any embarrassment.
Here's something that's really not known, and I was shocked to hear this. Right, so we all heard about the Von Erich curse, and we'll go through the rest of the Von Erichs with you. But a lot of people are like, it really wasn't a curse. It was just a bunch of boys doing drugs. But did you know that David Von Erich lost his first child at like 3 months old?
I didn't know that. I know that Fritz lost another son besides the three that you know of.
Yeah, that was Jackie, right? Yeah.
First son, yeah. I mean,
I had read that David lost his son at 3 months old.
I did not know that. I did not know that. That's I don't know. It's like God just reached out and decided he didn't like him. I mean, he'd give him this and he'd take it away,
Yeah.
I can't explain what it is. And then the boys brought a lot of that on themselves. They really did. I mean, they lived that style. They didn't have to. They could have done otherwise. But
they became intoxicated with the rock star lifestyle. And as we break down the three big names, obviously in the family outside of the father, what about the poor Mike Von Erichs of the world? I mean, is he screwed from the start, just coming into this cluster fuck? See, I said fuck. You could say fuck, Frank.
Okay.
But,
you can say fuck shit, whatever, Frank.
Yeah,
Right.
whatever floats your boat. But I mean, was this poor kid just doomed from the start? I mean, my God.
Well, the worst one was Chris.
Right.
I mean, he was 5 feet tall. I mean, bless his heart. Those boys, they really felt the pressure. Because they did not have the ability. There was no way. Those boys should have been in the office. They should have never been stars. They should have never been in the ring. And they knew it. And that's just more pressure on them. It's unnecessary. Another reason. I don't know why Fritz. I don't know why he did it, but he did. He pushed those boys in there. They were.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Going back to what you said about Fritz, was that another example of him saying, "I don't give a shit. These guys aren't wrestlers. I'm going to force them into the ring."
Well, they needed them for the program for whatever reason, so they forced them into it. I mean, it's just I can't. I don't know the family dynamic. I wasn't around the boys in their family life, but just it seems like a father would have been better. The mother blamed Fritz for all of it. She blamed him for everything, so she would know.
Frank, what I don't understand is that it definitely sounds like, from all the stories we've heard about Fritz, that he was an absolute disciplinarian taskmaster who basically raised his children almost like you would raise thoroughbred horses. Yet somehow, you said earlier that when they're away from him on the road, they go wild. How is it that he is not aware? I'm just asking your opinion. He's not aware that his kids are getting fucked up and laid and doing all sorts of stuff. How is he not aware of that at all?
Well, Fritz wasn't on the road. I mean, Fritz came to Dallas, and sometimes he went to Fort Worth, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
He
But when
wasn't
they
on the
come
road.
back home, look, like if you've
Well,
been on a
the
binge,
boys. I imagine they didn't always go home. I mean,
Right.
they were young men. They
Right.
didn't have to go home every night.
I
And I don't
understand.
know that they didn't have a part. I think Kerry had his own place. I think at some point. So
Listen,
I mean, he's not there when he was there. That's why they got away from him. He was like a drill sergeant.
Got it. Got
And
it.
they got away.
Yeah.
They went AWOL every chance they got.
but I want to be fair to Fritz and that family, because we've heard many sports stars where their parents have drove them and they've become iconic, like an Andre
Yeah.
Agassi or
Yeah.
you know I don't want to say Alex, but you know my point. We've
understand,
seen
yeah.
athletes be driven like that, and we can blame a little bit on the wrestling world. I mean, Frank, you were wrestling a lot of your life. I mean, is there anything more abnormal than the world of pro wrestling?
No, and it was the 70s and 80s, and drugs were everywhere.
Yes, sir.
I mean, they really were. Just the muscle relaxers, something as simple as that was anytime you wanted them. Just the simplest drugs. They were all there, and it was available. And Dallas was, like I said, they were hard on sports stars. Everybody, cocaine was everywhere. It really was, especially in the 80s.
Frank, how did you stay out of it then? Or maybe not. I don't know.
I'm
Here's
sorry, what
Mark
was the
Franklin.
question?
Yeah, there we go.
Well, there you go. There's your answer. Well, okay. Better. Let me fix that question. How did you not let it control your life?
Well, basically, I'm a cheap bastard. I wasn't going to pay for it. So that kept me safe. Yeah, I
It
wasn't
kept
going
you
to spend all my
grounded.
money on it. So
It kept
Mark
you
Gucci.
grounded. There you go.
that basically was what
hilarious.
saved me. Yeah, I wasn't going to spend the money on it. Yeah, I spend 50 here and there, but I wasn't going to spend my
Yeah,
paycheck.
you're being cheap saved your ass. Good
It
job.
did. It has. It saved my ass a few times. Yeah.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
Mike, are you ready to switch over to the other half of the equation, the fabulous Freebirds?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Fill us
Sure.
in on the Freebirds, Mr. D.
That was 3 of the craziest men I ever met. I mean, there was you dare not give them a challenge because they would take it to the max. It was just amazing. And Buddy, they beat Buddy. They treated Buddy like God. I can't even think. Redheaded stepchild's not enough.
Larry Fine.
Oh, worse than it was awful.
Hey,
how
what
they
are you
treated
picking on
Buddy.
me for?
It was incredible how they treated Buddy, and he just took it. He was that way. Of course, Valentine did the same thing when he was Dale Valentine. I understand. Buddy finally gave up on that. Johnny drove him crazy, and Buddy was nutty already, so it wasn't. But Buddy was the perfect fit for that day. I had one match where Grizz was trying to find a spot for me in Louisiana, and he booked me with the Freebirds one time. And then that night he booked Buddy with the Freebirds, booked me in Louisiana and Lafayette, and Buddy with him in Lake Charles, and Buddy clicked. And after that, he was a Freebird. So yeah, I didn't fit. I wasn't crazy enough to fit in with those boys. Now I loved it. Michael and I were dear friends. I mean, we partied together, we had fun together, but he had to settle down before I could party with him. But he was fun to go out with. He had the reputation for drinking Jack Daniels. And you'd go anywhere, and people would bring over these shots of Jack Daniels. They'd be lined up on the table, 6 or 8 of them. So I never had to buy I learned to drink Jack Daniels. But I would sit, and he'd just slide one over, and I'd drink the straight up Jack Daniels with him. But never had to buy a drink when I was with Michael. Somebody else would always buy them.
How about Terry Gordy? What was Terry Gordy like as a person?
Terry was an odd duck. He'd had a few concussions, and he could be a little volatile. He could go off the head. You had to watch him a little bit. I mean, he wasn't a bad guy, and most of the time you could laugh and enjoy, but just be careful around him because he could just sort of get in a little bit crazy. And then when he got to doing the pills and the drugs real bad, and then what he had to comas and all of that, he got really strange then. Just, I don't know. kind of guy you want to know where he was, you know.
My partner and I go back and forth sometimes. I've always stood by this. I felt that at one point in the prime of the Freebirds, that Michael Hayes himself could have had been selected to be a champion. I mean, we find out years later that he was probably not the best as personality-wise to have the responsibilities of carrying a strap. But at any point, do you feel like he was world championship material? Because as a fan just watching, I felt like he had the pizzazz and everything else.
Michael had the pizzazz, but I don't think Michael. No, I knew Michael from trying to do business with him. Michael couldn't do business. He would get frustrated or get overwhelmed by the business side of it. He tried to do some booking, and he took off on us a couple of times because it was just too much pressure. So no, Michael, he would not have been a good champion.
Were you
Not
surprised
at that time.
Were you surprised he wound up working for Vince? I mean, talk about
Well,
pressure.
I don't know, but he got to Vince. He was older. You know, I was dealing with him when he's still in his 30s.
Right.
When he got to Vince, he had a little bit more age on him and a little bit more. And you know, the Birds were dead. You know, Michael and Buddy were dead. I mean, Terry and Buddy were dead. So I think that was a sobering thing a little bit for Michael too. I would imagine.
Sure.
Yeah, your running mates are dead. I mean, I was telling earlier. We were show you how the Birds were. They were down in Biloxi one night. Well, actually, it was in the afternoon before the show. And back in those days, Biloxi had like a dividing line, and the good people stayed on one side, and the bars and all the bad stuff happened on the other side. So naturally, the Birds always partied on the other side where all the bad stuff happened. And Terry got into a fight with a guy. I don't know if he was a biker or what. I don't remember, but they had a pretty good fight. And they threw the guy out. And the Birds left, and the guy came back in and killed the bartender.
Oh, shit.
And killed him. So the cops come to Michael, and Terry wanted them to come and speak against the guy. And they refused to do it because, you know, they were afraid of being in the spotlight in a dark arena. You could easily get shot. You know, this guy killed one guy, he'd shoot them too. So they would.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff they did. They would fight in a New York second. Didn't matter what the odds were. You know, just they lived a crazy life. They really did. It was amazing.
Frank, tough question because I heard you mention Grizzly Smith. Back in the day, did you guys know that he was
Yes.
messing around with younger kids? And what was that like for you on a moral basis?
Well, it wasn't news. I mean, Grizz had been doing that for 30 years. We weren't the first to find that out. You know, everybody nobody saw it, but everybody knew it. No, I won't tell that story either because the boys are still alive. But I saw Grizz with a young girl one time. Not with her like that, but you know, they both started stabbering, and he's explaining that he's going to sleep on top of the sheets and she's sleeping under them. And, you know, and I was real sick at the time, and I didn't care. I was just wanting to go to bed. But I thought about it later, and I noticed after that, Grizz was the office stooge in Louisiana. And if you were late, anything like that, he'd tell Bill, and Bill would fine you. I never got fined. I was late, didn't make it, but I never got a fine. I never said anything, but he knew I knew. I'd seen him with this, you know, she was like 14.
I guess this is a ridiculous question. And, you know, Bill Watts is known as to be a tough and no nonsense type of guy. I'm surprised that he would allow someone to work for him that would be doing like.
Well, Grizz was a good idea man, and he was loyal to Bill. He was a stooge, and he was Bill's stooge. Bill didn't have to be there. Whatever happened, Bill knew. Grizz would tell him.
Are you forced in a way, because the business has these dark corners? Are you forced to compartmentalize a lot of this shit just to get by?
No. I guess I'm just totally. I grew up in the business. Nothing. This wasn't. You know, Grizz wasn't the only guy. You know, I mean, these things happen. I saw it as kids. I saw it as a kid. I saw it growing up. I never think twice about it. It's just.
You just were numb to it because you grew up in the business. It was just it was commonplace, right?
I've seen some. I mean, I woke up in the morning and found Gorgeous George asleep on the sofa. That's the world I grew up in.
Nice.
Right at the end of his career, he was drinking, and they didn't wrestle on Sundays. He couldn't afford a hotel room, so one Sunday morning he was asleep on the sofa in the house.
His valet wasn't on the floor? I'm
No,
so confused.
just Gorgeous George. But I mean, that's the world I grew up in. So no, nothing. I knew about. Different races, homosexuals. They were all. Growing up, I never thought twice about any of that stuff. So I never think about it now. It was just part of my life growing up.
Par for the course.
It was just part of the course. These people were different. Foreigners. I guess I was lucky that way. I guess.
So I'm going to ask you this then. Now that you're living in the world today, where we have a woke country, and you grew up in this situation, how do you feel what's happened to our country now compared to what you grew up in?
Well, you're going to get me to talk politics.
Let's go, baby. Let's do it.
Talk politics or religion, and that's the two things that start fights. But,
that's all we do here, Frank. That's all we do. Politics and religion.
Let's just say that I'm conservative in the way I see things. Not so much, not like a religious conservative as much as just I'm very open to how people live. I don't really care how you live. I don't care whether you're the pin or the cushion. It doesn't matter to me. But I do believe that there are certain values that everybody has in common, and they need to be extolled. They need to be brought out. So yeah, I guess I am a little bit conservative. I'm not happy with some of the things I see.
Let me ask you about somebody else here, sir.
Yes, please stop calling me sir.
Well, listen, I call myself sir, so I apologize. Let's talk about Bill Mercer. What was Bill Mercer like?
Bill Mercer. Nice guy. I always thought he wasn't a great ring wrestling announcer.
Oh.
He was a little more. I always thought he felt above the wrestling a little bit. It seemed like in the commentary. I don't know. He sounded to me like you. Have you ever heard the old commentary from? I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Did the Hollywood wrestling back in the 50s? They would break the pencils and stuff, and he kind of sounded like that guy a little bit. Almost like he wasn't making fun, but he almost was. I thought sometimes.
A little too hokey.
Too much tongue in cheek.
Little things. When I first got to Dallas, I copied. I never had an original idea in my life. I stole everything from somebody. Well, Gary Hart, who I have no respect for, the only thing he ever said that I had respect for, he said the only advantage to an original idea is you're the first one to get to use it. But I've lost track of what I was saying. What were we talking about?
We were talking about Bill Mercer.
Bill Mercer. Bobby Heenan used to call people Norman. And he'd call them Norman because little people like for you to remember their name. And since he couldn't remember people's names, he called everybody Norman. And I was a great area, so I would call him Norman. And he went to Fritz and complained. And I tried to tell him, shoot back. You got the bike. Say something about me. Call me a name. He didn't want it happening. He was above that. You know what I mean? Little things like that. It just, he was okay. But I always thought Mark Lawrence was circles around him as far as an announcer. Mark, if I wanted to sell a show, that's the guy I would have sell my show. He'd do
that
the
guy was
promo
smooth.
show. Maybe if he's not doing color, but have him sell the show that's coming up.
He was very smooth, very smooth.
Well, he's a preacher. He's a preacher he's a preacher. He has that sincerity about him. It just comes out of him.
Tell us about the Dallas crowds and the WCW crowds in general. Mike has always felt that they had a real shot at one point of possibly being able to be true competition for Vince's vision. Any thoughts on the crowds and the passion level of the Texas audience?
Well, we never came close, numbers-wise, to even getting close to Vince's shows. We were nowhere near. But we were within a couple of tenths of a point of the Atlanta shows every week. So we were right there. Some weeks we beat them. We were number 2. So, that was our competition. Vince had too much money. We couldn't compete with Vince. Knew that up front.
Did you know right away that Vince McMahon was going to be able to do the sorts of things he went on to do? After all, and at the end of the day, and it is sort of amazing, with all the territories, all these different promoters who had clout back in the day, one man somehow toppled them all like a stack of dominoes. At what point did you realize that Vince better be taken seriously?
Well, at the time, every territory was gone but Atlanta. I mean,
Wow.
it
Too
happened
late.
so quickly. I mean, it just happened so quickly. He just had to, he took the money and instead of putting it in his pocket, he spent the money to make money, not like Jimmy. He
Right.
spent the money in ways to make money, like Mr. Crockett did. And that's the difference. That's why I talked about Jimmy. Jimmy was.
In your mind, was the war that was to come, the WCW, WWE Monday Night Wars, to you, the moment that Jimmy Jr. comes in, is that when it's over to you, that there's not going to be anything in the end except Vince conquering?
Well, I don't think there was a point where I just said that's it, but I knew Jimmy. When I saw how Jimmy was running the company, I knew it wasn't going to last. I didn't know when the end would come, how it would come, but it was going to come. I mean, he was spending all his money, and they weren't making enough to cover the bills. You can't do that. You just can't do that. And it was just a matter of just bad decisions all around. You know.
Yeah.
And not just those decisions, but like I said, the limos, the first class airfare, the suites at the finest hotels in the city. You know, what the hell?
Frank, do you think that Dusty had some responsibility in that, being that he was the booker?
Oh yeah, well he took advantage of it. Of course he did. They all did. Dusty, Flair, they all did. I mean, Jimmy's doling out the money, wouldn't you? The guy's giving it to you. Why not?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah! Oh hell yeah! I'd have took it in the new. I mean, I took the $1,200 to spend 5, 7 days, 6 days on the road. You know.
Fuck, you took free Jack Daniels, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
right?
I'd take do it in the New York second. I took his money, but Jimmy was just a bad businessman all the way around.
Let's play what if a little bit. If the boys don't get hooked on drugs, does WCCW become one of the major contenders and still be around this day? Well, maybe not now, but
no, because Fritz basically sabotaged Kenny so that Kenny couldn't run it. Then the boys couldn't run it, so it would go to Jerry. The only reason Jerry took it was because he wanted the $1 million in advertising money. So the only reason he had me there was to keep the TV show running for that year so he could collect his $1 million, which he paid $50,000 to get. And then the bills were paid by the Dallas show. All the TV bills, everything were paid by the Dallas show. So he had no money in it other than just a little bit here and there. And he got $1 million. And then he closed it all down and went back to Dallas, went back to Tennessee. That's all it was. It was he got $1 million and he let it go. He knew. He didn't have any interest in coming down there at all. That's the last thing they wanted to do. Lawler didn't want to go down there. Jerry really didn't. He'd come down because he wanted to make sure everything was okay. So he'd come down on Friday and leave on Saturday or Sunday, you know.
Wow.
I might hear from him once a week, maybe on the phone once in a while. You know, very rarely, though.
You know, you mentioned Gary Hart. Was Gary Hart was he not a brilliant mind in wrestling?
I don't know about his mind in wrestling, but I never thought Gary was a good booker, because Gary would book one match as the main event, and if you look at the rest of the card, it's just stuff thrown together. I mean, I was in matches where at Reunion Arena there would be a 6-man tag and a 2-ring, but out of one of the main matches, but there's nothing. It's just 6 guys put together in a 2-ring match, a 6-man tag. There's no angles. They were just thrown together. Where Kenny and Watts and George Scott, this angle, built this angle, built this angle, built this angle, that reached to here. Gary had this and then a bunch of other crap put it around it. And that was the way he booked the town. And I didn't think that was smart booking. Everything was booked around this certain angle. It was the boys and him, or his heel and the boys. and everything else was just thrown together. There were no other angles. There was no Ice against somebody. There was no Chris Adams against somebody. I mean, there was no underneath angles. Just like Bill Watts, he talked about Kenny wanted to have it where any wrestler could wrestle any guy in the territory, and it was some angle that would be why they were wrestling. There was always a reason. No matter what the match was, there was a reason. Because he had done something in the past to put it together. Not Bill. Not when we won the World Class Tag Team Championships. You know how we won them? They gave us the trophy Friday night and bring it to a Monday, and we'll pass it off to Kevin and somebody, I forget who. But that's how we won the title. Didn't even have a match. Just gave it to us. Why not have a match? Get us over a little bit instead of just giving it to us and dropping it. It wouldn't have cost but one week. But no, he doesn't do that. That's just the kind of book. He decided he wanted this. How we're gonna. Oh, but they won it in Singapore. Nobody believed we won the match in Singapore.
Frank, I believed it. I believed that, Frank. I thought it happened.
Rio de Janeiro?
Rio de Janeiro.
I'm sorry. I mean, that's the kind of stuff he did. It wasn't logical. There wasn't any thought to it. It was just, Gary would get this idea and he'd do it. And then just pile a bunch of stuff around, bring in some stars and make a show out of it.
Frank, being raised in the magazine days, Mike and myself, we were raised that belts were very important. Resume was very important. Nowadays, belts don't feel so important. So it's a strange question, but hey, it's a fan asking a wrestler. Are you ever frustrated at any point during your career? Like, do you want more titles? Do you want more of a push? Does the background politics piss you off? I mean, what were your thoughts on all of that as far as ascending and descending on a card?
Well, most of the time, you kind of knew your spot going in. I mean, in most of the territories I was in, I knew I was a preliminary wrestler. And so my job was to basically build stars, to have good matches, entertain the people. When I did have, main event matches and whatnot, then that was different. But it never bothered me. And the thing is that the titles don't mean anything because the titles are given to you. You don't win them. I mean, I never understood. There's a wrestler, and I won't mention his name, but he made a trophy for every belt he ever won. He's got a whole trophy case full of trophies for all the professional wrestling belts he won. What the hell? It's a gimmick. You didn't win a thing. The only thing I worried about was my paycheck. I don't care if I'm working first match or last match. I want the most money I can make. It was a business. That's how my dad, when I was 6 years old, I asked my dad, I started seeing finishes again and again. I asked my dad if wrestling was real. And he said, we were driving down the road. He said, son, the first thing you've got to understand is wrestling's a business. And I never forgot that. So it never bothered me about titles and stuff like that. Business is what was, my money is what mattered more than anything.
Did any promoters ever fuck you out of paydays?
Well,
listen, there's no promoters alive since Vince McMahon. You can use some names.
No,
They're not alive.
I don't care. I don't care about the promoters. That's a different story. You got to remember, wrestling. You're taking the promoter's count on everything. So did I ever get fucked on a payday? I probably did. I mean, Bill Watts, I can't remember what year it was, probably 81. That was a Superdome show with the Dog and Michael. And, we had 30,000 people, but the gate was only like $180,000. So that's like $6 a ticket. But the ticket price was a 20, 10, 8, and 6. And I figured out the average ticket price was like $6.75 or $7 or something. How the hell does that happen on a 20, 10, 8, and 6? But Watts had once said that it cost $50,000 to open the Superdome. So I think he took the $50,000 off the top before he started making paydays. That would make you get fucked that way. But how do you prove that? You don't get to see the payoff sheet. The only one that ever showed you a payoff sheet was Elton Owen. And he'd pay you $35.27, and he'd show you a payoff sheet with absolutely no marks on it, perfect. And this is what we had, and I'm supposed to believe that. I've seen payoff sheets. You make mistakes, you scratch stuff out. His were perfect. So, you got screwed, but how do you prove it? Yeah.
I got to ask you, how did you work Watts's area? I heard the traveling was out of control. Like, how could
It
you have
was.
made any money doing that, Frank?
Well, I mean, again, remember, I was traveling in the era when gas was 75 cents a gallon, or 75 cents a gallon or less. And we would travel. I mean, it was me, the grappler, Scott Irwin, and Ken Mantell. We traveled, the four of us, and we just split the expenses. You know, Kenny and I would stay in a room, or Grapp and usually Grapp and Scott stayed in the room, and Kenny and I stayed in the room. We split that. We just shared expenses.
All right, Frank, most important question. What was the most times you got laid in a year?
Oh man, most times.
365 days a
I
year.
imagine there was years when it was, I don't know, 500-600 times a year.
What?
What?
Oh yeah, maybe more. There were some years there, maybe a little more. I mean, I had
What are you doing, two a days?
I had a woman with me who enjoyed being with me, and we would sometimes pull off the road and spend a few minutes on a dark road and get back. I mean, what could I say? I enjoyed life.
Frank, what was it like the day you decided to hang up your boots?
I never decided. I came back from Puerto Rico and I was burnt out. I had gotten island fever real bad. I mean, I chased a bunch of people. Somebody spit on me, and I chased a bunch of people into the stands with a gang of chairs, trying to hit them with a gang of 3 chairs. I realized I'm going to get killed if I don't get off the island. So I went home, and the girl, Dusty, I've never told this story, but I actually got a call from Dusty that summer, late that summer. They were letting Joe LeDuc go because he was coked out. They had to let him go. And he wanted me to come in and start filling the dates. And I said yes. And the girl, she talked me out of it. So I called him back and said no. And the phone never rang again. So that was the end. That was my last chance to go back, and I didn't take it. And that was the summer of '83, the late summer of '83. And that was it. I worked some shade. In those days, I was living in Georgia. And I used to work some dates for Crockett when he was doing the Georgia towns. Just, I'd work Columbus and Macon and Albany and places so they wouldn't have to bring somebody down from the Carolinas. But after about 85, 86, that was it. I never worked after that.
Did you ever regret not being able to work for Vinnie Mac in the WWF?
Yeah. I would like to have I would like to have just been able to at least one time work in Madison Square Garden. That would have been nice. Just to do it,
As a wrestler, was Madison Square Garden, was that it? Or is it just us being New York thinking that Madison Square Garden was it?
Yeah. I don't know that guys, nobody ever talks about that, that I just, that was just one of those buildings I would have liked to have worked in. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but I just would have liked to have done it one time. I mean, I got to work in the Cow Palace one time, which was cool, But I know worked in the iconic building. I'd like to have worked in St. Louis one time, Philadelphia one time, just to see the buildings and work in the, see the crowds and work in them. But I never got that chance.
I'm assuming you worked the Omni, though.
Yeah, I worked the Omni one time. Yeah.
And what was that like?
I never got to work City Auditorium, believe it or not, but I worked the Omni. That was the highlight of my first year in my career. Yeah, I was. They were booking me at 2 shows, and whenever there was 2 shows, and somebody got hurt, and I got to fill in. I wasn't on the card, but I got to fill it. I filled in for Rick Oliver, and boy, I was proud. As big as crowd I'd ever seen.
Wow. So let me ask you, being a professional and you're in front of that crowd that big, did you get the butterflies?
Not really. No, I mean, Dennis Hall told me something that stuck with me very early on. He said, remember, they paid to see you. The fans paid to see you. So I always remembered that. So no, I never got nervous. I went out there. I was in control. I mean, I was calling the match. It was my job. I never got nervous. I don't ever remember being scared. Maybe the first few matches back in Louisiana when I was really untrained, and the first few in Georgia. But as soon as I got comfortable working, There was never a fear. Matter of fact,
Frank,
you had to drag me out of the arena. I would sit there after the match and continue to entertain just because I love doing it. You know?
I want to be respectful of your time. I just want to get one more question in, and then we'll hit you with something
You're
called the
fine,
Pharaoh's
brother.
final question. You mentioned you thought Kerry would be the one to survive everything.
Yeah,
Were
I
you
thought he
shocked
would
when
be.
you found out that Kerry decided to take his life?
I actually cried. I got tears in my eyes because I love Kerry. My first summer that I was in Texas, he and I worked together outside of Dallas. We were married. We worked nearly every show together. I even worked with him in his high school. A year after he left Lake Dallas High School, I worked with him at a show in his high school. I'm the one who talked about the discus punch. He was a champion discus thrower, and I asked him if he could spin like a discus and throw a punch. And all the guys got potated by it. I'm sorry, but I'm the guy that talked to him about doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jimmy, he's the maker of the Texas tornado punch, right? Wow.
Yeah,
Look at that, Frank.
I asked him. I said, you're a discus guy. Can you do a discus thing and throw a punch? And, oh, man, that thing would come in there and just knock your teeth loose sometimes. But, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm responsible for that. I also named the Superplex.
Did you really?
That was my name. Scott brought that to Louisiana, and we were introducing it. And I did an interview, and I talked about the greatest the greatest game is the Super Bowl, and forget what is that? Something else is super. The greatest move is the Superplex, and it just the announcer started calling it Superplex, and people picked up on it. You know.
Mike, I kind of feel like somebody owes this man money or something.
I think so. We need this guy to lawyer up a little bit. I think.
Yeah,
right?
What's going on?
Little late now.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Scott Irwin. How'd you take his passing?
Yeah, that's another one. Scott and I were very close, very close. Matter of fact, he was in a coma for a while, and I guess he came out of it for a few days, and he actually called me, and we must have talked for 2 hours, just about Louisiana and the business, and just back and forth, and then he died a few days later. But yeah, Scott, a couple of weeks later. But yeah, Scott, I got a real special feeling for Scott. Now, he was not a good human being to his wife and stuff, but Scott was a wonderful guy. He was so funny. He would leave and there'd be all the girls out back, around the car and stuff, around the cars and stuff, and he'd holler out, "Remember, girls, those guys are just using you, but I really love you."
Smooth.
So after a while, he'd go out, "Remember, girls, and then, I know you love us. They're just using."
Off they go.
Yeah, that was Scott.
To be used.
Well, Frank, let me personally thank you, and thank you for what you've done for the business, and just thank you. You gave us years and years of entertainment for fans like me and Jimmy, and we really appreciate you joining the Howard Stern of pro wrestling. Jimmy, you want to hit this icon with the Pharaoh's final question and send us out? Frank, once again, thank you, sir. It's truly our honor.
Thank you very much, guys. You made me feel great tonight. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Okay. Well, being New York guys and growing up here, and oddly enough, you finished off in around the '83, like you said. Right after you comes a man that changes everything. Everything. We don't have what we have today. We don't have WrestleMania. We don't have big time lights in the circus. Whether this is a good or bad thing can be debated till the end of time. We grew up when it was much more real, quote unquote. Yeah. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the passing of the legendary immortal Hulkster, Hulk Hogan.
I met him one time in Japan. He was with the Noki company, and I was with the Baba company, and we both had a night off. Both companies had the night off in Tokyo, so everybody kind of got together. And I met him that one time. He was a pill freak. I didn't know that. He'd taken a lot of pills, but I heard a lot of stories about how hard he was to work with, and but you got to, like you said, he's the guy who made the business what it is today. without Hogan, without that run, Vince McMahon would have. Angelo Savoldi told me that Vince was out of money. If the WrestleMania 1 hadn't succeeded, he would have gone broke. That WrestleMania 1 succeeded, he took that money and invested it, and it turned into what we have today. So Hogan's responsible for what's there. And you have to, whether you like the guy or not, he did it. I mean, he's the man. So he has my respect.
There it is, folks. You've been watching Monte and the Pharaoh with our special guest, Frank Dusek, and catch us tomorrow night for the Thanksgiving/Christmas special with Shelly Martinez. Until tomorrow, later. Thanks, Frank.
Couple things I want to cover, Jimmy.
Yeah.
500 level has now improved on the M&P code. Now go to MP30 for 30% off. Jimmy, I got to tell you something, right? I was at the beach, again, 500 level. If you guys haven't looked at the shirts, right, go to the website. It's incredible. And I got to be honest, right? So it was a little chilly today. I brought the dogs to the beach. I was off work for the Jewish holidays,
today.
Right?
It's cold.
It was cold,
Yeah.
but I have, from 500 level, I have a Roman Reigns sweatshirt. Now, usually sweatshirts are not always the nicest fabric, unless I'm into really nice fabric because I just don't like things up against my skin. So usually I'll get thinner type of shirts, but this is a heavy sweatshirt. The fabric, unbelievable. And you're going to get a deal at 30% off, Jimmy. I mean, my God, it's a no-brainer, guys. I am telling you, once you get one shirt from them, you'll get 50. I guarantee it. And they've got all the sports. Yeah, dude, tell me what you think of it, Jimmy.
They're so comfortable. I got to get a long sleeve now. I'm telling you, I got to, because it was chilly today, especially for a guy who's been in Panama City Beach the last 2 years. It was chilly today, and I love the material. It's so silky. Is that the right word for it? I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, dude.
It's so comfortable. So, yeah, I got to get myself some leveled long sleeves. That's for sure. 30%.
And again, it doesn't, they got plenty of wrestling stuff. They got baseball stuff. They've got football. They got everything, dude. MMA. They got it all, man. And I'm telling you, it's very high quality. Again, 500 level code MP30, 30% off. So if a T-shirt costs you $20, what's 30% off on $20, dude?
It's enough. 10 plus another 20% tacked on top. Not much. It's a steal. It's a steal.
I agree. I want to remind everybody too, the Monte and the Pharaoh show, hit the QR code, be willing to check out our shows on YouTube, where we got almost 24,000 subscribers. Go to our Facebook page where we're approaching 27,000 subscribers. And again, if you feel like donating to the show, please go to the Monte and the Pharaoh webpage, hit donate. Helps us bring in more guests, trying to entertain you. We've got the event coming up, so a lot of good stuff.
Hey man, what you gonna do when it all comes back to you? Think man, what you gonna say when it all falls away? Today, nothing have I found. Take a look around above the ground. There's no love out on the streets today. It's a mystery. Some say there's a better way. People love to talk to ease the pain. No way it's ever gonna solve a thing. Speak out, love to hear your voice. War and hate seem to be the drugs of choice. Tell me what tomorrow brings. It's a mystery. Open your eyes to truly see that there's no more time left for you and me. Now such a mystery that we refuse to Is the time or late? Better grab what's yours, don't hesitate. Don't say you didn't really have a clue. It's a mystery.